Good morning, everyone. You're listening to Trace Elements Radio, live on Revolution Radio, Studio A. Good morning, everyone, and I will come in later. I've got a Brazilian windows open, so give me a minute. And, of course, TraceElementsRadio.com. Sitting here with my coffee, with a great big smile on my face. You know, I've been thinking a lot about origins, our origins. So I want to kind of be your substitute teacher today and talk to you about what happened here. One of the oldest stories of how we got here, and then a quick history lesson which talks about ancient civilizations, but you're going to have to give me a little bit of leeway here because it's somewhat whimsical. Thursday, we're going to get into the biochemical manipulation of what is us now. When I thought about how to present this, since Thursday I've been thinking about it. It changed my mind yesterday. Something changed my mind. Actually, I fell deeply in love yesterday with men again. And it wasn't the normal things that I would fall in love with or be infatuated with, those deep, buttery voices that I like that used to do radio and television. It was something else. Now, I'm in Canada. We have absolutely no snow right now. At least where I am. I mean, it looks like fall more than spring, to be honest, because everything isn't perking up. There's no green yet. Here in Canada, our men have this awesome quality. They will go outside in 2 feet of snow and get the barbecue going. When I was thinking of our remote origins, and we've heard this story told so many times that men brought the fire, what really made us different? I was watching these men barbecuing. I didn't know them. I was just kind of sitting there watching. And you can't sit and watch men without them wanting to know what the heck you're doing. And I was trying not to be stocky about it. At first I was watching and I thought, wow, men have an incredible ability to take something really simple and make it really, really complicated. So I'm watching. And then I tried to take the judgment away from it and realized what they were doing was a ritual. What changed us? I think it's men. We talk about us, hunter-gatherers, but the real thing that changed us from other species that were on this planet, and believe me, there were many. We are different. What we are now is changing, of course, but what we are as a group, this big family, is very different, and I think it's very different because of that. When we made fire, when we burnt the coals, when we learned to dig a hole and put the meat that we had killed in that hole, roast it for hours, sit around, and this usually wasn't women's work, as you would think. Men did this. The man who was in charge of the tribe did this. The old men did this. We still have the ritual of the barbecue. We still have, and it's really celebrated in the United States. I think South Carolina is one of the best at it. Pit masters. Men in charge of the pit, of the roasting. Now, one would think, because of how we raise our animals for cheap food, that we are just eating horrific dead things, tortured. But it wasn't always that way. Animals were respected. There was a ritual of the hunt. There was a ritual of the killing. There is a ritual of the food. I think the rituals of our food are the one thing, the major thing that's changed us on this planet. Our brains got bigger. We became different when we started to eat cooked food. So let me take you to this one place. Remote. A lake that tells a different story. That has revolutionized our understanding of people here on this earth. Because our ancient human ancestors were an elusive lot. Their remains are literally thin on the ground. And even when fossils are unearthed, it is rare for them to be complete. Sometimes they must be pieced together from dozens and dozens of tiny, tiny fragments. It's why a find that we've spoken of before, a find in 1984, excited the entire field of research and continues to do so today. It was the skeleton of a young boy, discovered at Lake Turkana in the deserts of northern Kenya. Northern Kenya still has one of the most powerful regions on this planet. Arid land. This land is powerful. It feeds millions of herds in this tiny, tiny little area. This may be a piece of what old Earth was like. I think it covered the entire planet, but this is the last fragment. Now this young boy died when he was about 8 years old. His bones sank into sediments of this ancient lake. They were preserved there for about 1.5 million years. He was and is the most complete early human fossil ever discovered. Yet this Turkana boy is one of many human fossils discovered near that lake. Together, they span at least 4 million years of human evolution. I use that term lightly because, yes, we are related, but we are not them. But this one spot has told us a huge amount of what came first, how the ancestors lived. Today, Lake Turkana lies in the midst of a dry, hostile desert environment. But this was not always the case. About 2 million years ago, the lake was much larger. Surrounding area was green, fertile, lush. Since then, rapid changes in climate have periodically caused the land to sink, the lake to disappear. And occasionally, it disappeared altogether and would return. During wetter times, it was an ideal place for the early ones, the ancients, to live. And when they died, it was a perfect place for their remains to fossilize. That's because Lake Turkana lies in a volcanic area, which is again part of the story. Fertile land, volcanoes, the CO2 GANs that Cash talks about. It's where tectonic activity moved the Earth's crust, create new layers, which is happening all over the world right now as we speak. But it is within these layers that fossils from different time periods are found. Those are all great circumstances where you can have bones that get buried in sand and that becomes sandstone. Periods of rainfall since eroded many layers, exposing fossils more clearly. The rediscovery, almost always by accident, and the best archaeologist on the planet, Mr. Bulldozer. So, excavations at that lake started 1968 when Richard Lakeley of the Turkana Basin Institute led a group to the eastern side, known as Kubu Fora. It was an enormous area. Aerial views had suggested there were lots of fossils there. Of what? They weren't sure. Their idea was to start at one end and work their way to the other end, says Lakeley. The first few years were a bit of an adventure, but before long, fossils of numerous species were tumbling out of the ground like a gift. So in 1972, Lakeley's team uncovered a skull and some limb bones of a almost 2 million year old Homo Rudolphinus, I think it's called. It was anyway a skull known as 1470. The discovery reinforced the idea that was emerging at the time, that there was no one single line of early humans. There were multiple lines, diverse lines. It was already known that 3 other species were living in Africa around the same time. One called Habilis erectus and Paranthropus bozi. The Rudolphus added to another diversity. So in other words, humans were a diverse group of species. There was not one. Evolution did not happen that there was one and that we separated. There were many. And later finds from Kobe Fora suggest that at least 3 Homo species coexisted between 1.78 and 1.98 million years ago. It's why when we see and discover ancient footprints that make us question, were we there? We did not exist yet. We are not those ancients. But it was not until the discovery of Turkana Boy, also known as Nerio Kodomi Boy. I don't know why, probably a bunch of different things. But we began to learn the most important, to us anyway, this new emerging Homo erectus, the standers, the fire builders, the ones who made the change. Now, the Turkana Boy is one of the most monumental and important fossils that radiates about, new questions, and shows that evolution could not be what we thought it was. So for one thing, Homo erectus were thought, it's debated, to be our direct ancestor, the old one, that perhaps one could come from. They were the first hominids to migrate out of Africa, spreading into Europe, into Asia, into some of the islands when there was the break-off between the continents. We were all connected in this one big blob. Then there were islands. Then Antarctica separated. What we call, a lot of the islands that are around India, the one from, God, I don't know why this word always, why it's hard for me to even remember it. I know the island, I'm picturing it. Australia, when it was still connected. It was connected to Africa, then it was connected to Antarctica, then it separated, allowing for a new species in water to be born. And it's there. These are the people. So there must have been people there. We were probably more north at the time. That could be debatable, but there's connection. And you can tell when you look at the ancient people of Australia that they are of two distinct human lines. At least I do when I look at them. One is us, one is not us. It's the only way I can explain it. But you look at them and you see something else. I don't mean this as a insult in any way. It's just, you know how I can look at people and I can say human origins, like I can tell if someone's a little bit Greek or a little bit Italian or a little bit Spanish or a little bit South American. Sometimes what tribe they're from, if they're from here. I'm saying they're from a different clan. But anyway, in some ways, the first hominids that migrated out were strikingly similar to us. They had significantly bigger brains than the slightly older ones called habilis, Homo habilis. They were much taller. What's more, Tukanaboy revealed that his species walked like us. Different than the other older hominids did. He centered his weight over his pelvis as he walked, like us. He also had arched feet and a relatively long stride, standing instead of slumping over. I think this too has to do with what you started to eat at this time. But it proves that he was able to carry things with his free hands while he was walking. It's a step in the direction of the way we humans walk, away from the way other ancestral hominids, any kind of primate, moves. Yes, they can stand, but they don't move like us. So he would have been able to have endurance. He would have been a runner, very good at carrying things. And if you are able to run, you can chase. So what were they chasing? What were they carrying? There are some clues that his family were carrying tools, hunting tools, like spears. The anatomy of their hands suggests that they could do so. Spears, unfortunately, do not fossilize, but a 2013 study suggested with his shoulders, with his arms, that he had evolved the ability to throw. In contrast, our closest ape relatives have very little throwing power, and the more ape-like ancestors who spent more of their time in trees probably sucked at throwing. Although, you can see monkeys in the zoo and they're pretty good at tossing poop at people because they're angry. It at least suggests that this species, this erectus, hunted more intensively than any other species, which helped them expand their territory. There would be no reason to move out of Africa, to travel around, to go and look at things, unless you were following herds. Why do you follow herds? You're not just gathering roots at this point. You're not just going after carrion. You're going after live animals, which made me think that these were not just hunters, but cooks. Cooking may have been the thing that pushed us to change. Now, that would have been useful, of course, that during Turkana Boy's time, that the climate was extremely variable. The forests his ancestors had thrived in began to change into more open grasslands, leaving early humans fewer places to hide from large predators. These hominids faced a choice: retreat to the trees or deal with the threat head on. And they looked like, anyway, that they chose the latter, because hand axes have been found around the world at the exact same time. Also, very intricate skill here with the flint, how to cut rock, how to make a sharp edge. This is a major thing. If you make a sharp edge, myself, I think you're cooking at the time. You need a sharp edge to cut pieces of meat off, if you can't just pick through it. So they may have found safety in numbers. Groups that live, work, and hunt together are always less vulnerable than lone individuals. That's why animals do it. And this may have given Erectus the drive that was needed to become more social. Again, signs of cooking to me. Cooking is one of the most powerful things we have. What has changed with us recently, especially since the last war, when companies have taken over to make pre-packaged things that we don't have to work to cook, where we're eating fast. We're eating things that are more Trojan food than food. They're food-like, food-ish. Cheap, fast is not how we are. But there's evidence that they shared information, worked in teams, which you have to do to become a family, which would have changed our brains, which have changed our bodies, which is again changing our bodies now. It's why you see so much fat. This is how evolution changed. It could just be we evolve, we change because of food. How we eat. Spending time in the kitchen, preparing food. Know that for a fact. You could eat anything you wanted. Anything. If you took the time to cook it. We still have pantries. We still have stoves. We're not doing the communal thing because they're working us to death, of course, where we have meals with families and stuff. But I was thinking yesterday, while I was kind of out there stalking the boys, I hope I didn't scare them, they did not seem scared. I sat and talked to them about what they were doing. We've all seen men barbecue, right? It's something we basically ignore, but there are grandfathers out there and their grandchildren, and you could see that they were showing them how to prepare the food on the fire. So I was talking to them, and of course, they're guys, so they're flirting with me. They're bringing me little pieces of meat over, and I'm sitting there. I ate very, very well. Telling you, you want to meet a man, find a barbecue pit, hang out there. You will find a boyfriend. And a good one, too. I don't think there's anything more community than a barbecue. This is still an ancient ritual. It could have been the change, the thing that brought us together. So the stone tools that they found, the antediluvian hand axes, all date from this time. They have been found throughout Africa and in all the world, many parts, all the world. This suggests that early humans could make them, share the ability with others. This means that teaching had begun. Now, remember, I am not talking about us. We are not these beings. And yes, these beings were all over the world. These beings who weren't supposed to be smart enough to sail. To me, it kind of throws back almost 1 billion years that they must have been older to be on every single continent. Now, the earliest known hand axes were actually discovered near this lake, Turkana, 2011. They're saying that they're only 1.76 million years old. But they belong to this one specific group. Now, once this technology had emerged, it persisted for over 1 million years. When something works, why change it? There's good reason for this. Hand axes are multifunctional tools, the Stone Age equivalent to the Swiss Army knife. So, for example, they'd been ideal for butchering meat. It's a reasonable explanation that the hand axes were involved in dismembering, chopping limbs apart, cutting through flesh. So given how long they persisted, it must have been easy to teach others how to make them. This is what science says, but I don't think specifically this was easy. But it was a starting point. There is no better way to meet a new tribe than to teach them something functional. It also doesn't mean that this group of beings had language. It's very easy to teach students now, people now, to make similar stone tools, and that they can easily teach others with not a word spoken. Look, repeat. You don't need language for this. You need to have your hands free to open, to see, to show. You don't need language. Language, at this point, by the looks of their necks and their facial structures, doesn't look like these beings spoke. Still, they were able to create the older one, stone flints, a tribute to the much smaller brained H. habilisk. Now, Lake Turkana also helped reveal what was happening even earlier in our family, before the Homo genius arose, started, created, came from Mars, who knows. But in 1974, researchers in Ethiopia discovered this 3.2 million year old fossil, the one they nicknamed Lucy, which we actually know was put together by several different body parts. They keep trying to pass this off that she stood like us. She did not. this has been proven. But they're still trying to pass this as science. But anyway, she was a contender for another direct ancestor. Lucy was found. Well, there was very little known earlier. All the specimens were after the age of Lucy. And this is from the Royal Society. They came out October 2015. They're still quoting this like this was a whole bunch of body parts that they sewed together, because again, there was more than one type living together at the time. If not living together, at least traveling the same lands, dying in the same places. So the obvious interpretation of what was there is that what they've said is that nothing happened before Lucy. That there was one lineage descending from apes through Lucy. That's a lie. Many different beings. And again, we've talked about bloodlines and what that means. We are not directly related to these beings. We change so dramatically, so drastically, that we are not them. So, of course, others have made it their mission to find fossils from other species around the same species, or time anyway, of Lucy. And that meant going back to this lake, Turkana. Teams found fossils on the west edge of the same lake that demonstrated there was a huge diversity at the time of Lucy. Now we'll let their sloppy little science. I'm not going to argue at this point, but in the 90s, a possible ancestor of Lucy's species was known. I think it was called Anamensis, the oldest species known to come from this lake, living 4 million years ago. A few years later, again on the west of that lake, team found another species. Flat-faced man, basically. This species lived 3.5 million years ago, when other members of Lucy's species also roamed. So know that when the species comes about, it doesn't mean that the other ones are gone. There are changes. They say it's because it's a direct, they want to say we're all related in that way. But I would think that certain things that we would do or eat would specifically change us. Air quality, food availability would change us far more dramatically than what we've been told. But at least it meant that there were several contenders for that common ancestor thing that they're looking for. Homo, which, I wish they'd find another word for it. I don't want to be called a homo. But anyway, it largely killed off the idea that humans evolved from a single line. Scientists are even admitting this now. It's not possible when there are so many different kinds of beings living at the exact same time everywhere and making certain tools that are the same. Also shows, I guess, what people would call the Akashic Records, that we make the same things at the same time all over the world. It's like there is some sort of link between us all, that when one species makes something, another one does too. So this lake, Turkana, showed no signs of losing its status as a key fossil source. That could be, of course, many reasons. Volcanic ash keeps things longer. But a recent find has once again shaken up our ideas of what our the ancient ancestors could do. So, summer last year, 2015, researchers announced the discovery of the oldest known tools, dating more than 3.3 million years ago. There's an argument about how old these are. Some are saying much, much older than millions. They're going towards what I'm thinking. These tools are billions. The problem with saying how old something is when it gets beyond a million is this planet has been bombarded with radiation several times, so it's very hard to date. But, for sake of argument, we will say, okay, 3.3 million, fine. So it's been assumed that only one Homo species could have ever made tools. But the tools were older than anything known to be us, Homo fossils, suggesting that other species, far older ones, also made these tools. If they said we weren't there, then something made these things, right? Seems obvious. So, scientists didn't think these beings were intelligent or skilled enough to make tools, but we know that apes make tools. Monkeys make tools. A stick going in a tree to get grubs is a tool. If you're using a stick, that's tools. So what they think of as intelligence is suspicious, anyway. But it is a crucial discovery that there was thought to be a substantial link between the emergence of humans, Homo, and the emergence of technology. They're saying this is not true. So when you look at all these finds, it's abundantly clear to me that at least Lake Turkana has played a pivotal role in our understanding of what was here before. Now, it's not to say that the area is particularly significant for early humans, really. This Lake Turkana is simply an ideal spot, a place for fossils to be preserved. That doesn't mean human evolution doesn't happen elsewhere. For instance, many of our ancestors might have lived in rainforests where the ground was too acidic for fossils to survive. Now, the absence of evidence does not mean evidence of absence. But that does not diminish the importance of the site itself. Now, to some degree, if what you're seeing is Turkana connects the dots, it allows us to see multiple species that lived millions and millions of years apart and compare them. And we're lucky that this area was a geological trap, allowing us to glimpse into the many lives of the early humans that preceded us on this good planet Earth. That there were many different species that lived at the exact same times. And we change by need. Then we go to one of the ancient tribes. One of the last tribes on this human earth who hasn't had their stories manipulated, or at least manipulated less than the majority of stories have been manipulated. I often ask, what if parts of history were completely wiped out, rewritten, because they would simply be inconvenient? But as all of you know, the what if part is completely unnecessary, because there are many documented ancient tribes all over this world, some still surviving, telling stories of gods much older than the one we believe in, who came to earth to shed some light upon the lesser human race. They called them the children of Enoch, described them as superior beings from different or distant space, different dimensions, specifically the vicinity of the star we now call Sirius, who either visited or indirectly gave birth to the Sumerian civilization, and presumably erected later dominating civilizations like the Toltec, the ancient Egyptians, the Mayan empires, capable of building structures that have modern science. Well, modern day science is still scratching their heads at these things. We go to the tribe from Africa called the Dogon once again. And they have been speaking about our dark sister since before history had been documented. The tribe had vast and has vast knowledge concerning a nearby star system and its precise functions. The star we now call Sirius and its mysterious companion was actually discovered much later by modern scientists. So are we supposed to believe these people came up with the knowledge from skyhooks? I think, myself, that they had to have known, either traveled there, or, like they said, were told these things. In 1844, a German astronomer, Friedrich Bessel, caught wind of Sirius's strange behavior, decided to investigate the matter. First, Bessel discovered that Sirius followed a really strange path, but had no idea why. He could only presume another body, similar in size, was somewhat near, altering its course. The fact that this object remained invisible, still a mystery. Future astronomers were later able to conclude that the invisible object was in fact what we now call Sirius B. It remained invisible because it was a degenerative dwarf, a planet or body that is much heavier in mass than it should be for its size, for its volume. It took modern science and equipment decades to discover what the ancient Egyptians and the Dogon have known for more than 5,000 years. The fact that the ancient people from different periods of time and parts of the globe had identical astronomical knowledge, well, we have only been able to uncover lately. It's also mind-boggling of what they knew at the time. Modern science has established that Sirius is not very far away and is constantly moving closer and closer to our solar system, which means it will become brighter and more visible as time goes on. It is obviously visible to the naked eye for ancient people, as they used to describe it, and the timing of holidays or seasons, and even as a compass to navigate on the land, in the water. But the Dogon tribe has the most specific, detailed, vast information about this specific star system and claim there's also a third star. They call it MEA. In the Sirius system that our scientists can't see and have zero knowledge about. And their artwork, I have a picture up on the page, as a matter of fact, suggests contact actually occurred in the past. The same big-headed, fetus-looking aliens that people are still seeing to this very day. Now, all of these intriguing facts make many believe that history, before a certain point, was completely erased, brutally modified, according to the will of the rulers at the time. Every area of the globe has been under a totalitarian rule at some point, recent history, especially the last 3,000 years. So you can imagine the amount of knowledge forged, burned, depending on the interests of each new regime. The Romans basically wiped out any information about the Etruscan League and completely invented malicious lies about great cultures and civilizations that they exterminated, such as Carthage. Napoleon had a scary moment while being inside one of the Egyptian pyramids, decided to burn the library of Alexandria to the ground, destroying any previous information and drawings of ancient Babylon. Another fabulous and prosperous civilization that was likely guided by advanced beings. The history we learn in modern school or watch documentaries about is basically built on conflict. Peaceful periods are rarely mentioned. But the future of the human race could one day depend on what the ancient civilizations were trying to tell us thousands of years ago. And this has been wiped out. Now the brightest star in the sky is Sirius, without a doubt. The name Sirius comes from Greek language. Again, we're seeing manipulation here. And it's translated as the glowing one, or the bright one. Later it could have become Lucifer. We'll leave that for a minute. What might appear as a single star is in fact a double or triple star system, according to observations made even in the 20s. And apparently our scientists are just beginning to accept that the ancient people knew far more than they know now. According to the Dogon, the instructor gods descended from Sirius, brought knowledge and wisdom. What is interesting is that the Dogon knew what they know about Sirius and its triple star system. Now, according to studies, it's believed that Sirius C, the third system, is a red dwarf star, 100 times less massive than our sun, a lot less brighter, making it hard to see with our equipment. So much for our big brains. Anyway, the discovery is still waiting confirmation from our astronomic community. But hey, the Dogon knew about this triple star system way back. Ancient Egyptians knew about Sirius, and just like Orion, they considered this star system important. They believed the gods from Orion and Sirius. This is Osiris, this is Isis, this is the mother, this is the father. The Dogon are extremely interesting. Their most sacred, their most ancient traditions speak of a star that is accompanied by a planetary system, Sirius, that they call Potolo. So how did they know that? What's even more interesting is the fact that the Dogon knew that every 50 years the planet completed its orbit. They also knew that it was, well, in fact, some modern day astronomers have managed to begrudgingly collaborate. There's nothing worse than telling a scientist, do you know those people living in the bush, sitting around a fire in the mud, know more shit than you do? Piss them off. It does piss them off really bad. So the Dogon, again, knew about this star that they called Ya, corresponding to the relatively new discovery of Sirius C, which they are still saying, I'm not sure. Listen, it's there. Just, I don't know. Get a pencil and draw out the thing. So the Dogon believed that Ya is actually 4 times lighter than Potolo, even though it takes the same time to complete its orbit around Sirius A. And I have diagrams that I put up before, but I'll find them for you again. How is it possible that these incredibly intelligent people, known as the Dogon tribe, knew all of these extensive astronomical details? Details considering purely mythical, magical stories, until they were actually collaborated by astronomy and science. I don't know if scientists finally took their thumbs out of their mouths and said, they're right. But anyway, all of a sudden, mythology turns into reality once again. Now apparently, we have to understand that there is a thin line between mythology and reality, between the truth, the manipulation, and the real story. This is what I try to present to you. And it's just a matter of interpretation. And interpretation always goes to the kings, their cross-dressing pedophile priests, and even worse, their scientists. So how is it possible that the Dogon had all of this knowledge without the tools to observe the sky? I'm saying they had the tools. Period. They had them. And their wisdom in astronomy, baffling these researchers, their detailed knowledge about our solar system is still incredible. They knew about Jupiter, referred to the giant planet as Dana Tolo. They knew about the 4 satellites and their rings. Their mythology described. We're calling it mythology because, don't tell scientists that it's science. That didn't come from them. But they're myth. We'll go into that, and then I'm going to tell you a wild story about our origins. I'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Trace Elements Radio. So, someone tried to call me when I was on break. Sorry, I was away from the computer. So if you would like to call back, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So call in again and I'll add you. So here we are with the Dogon once again. They knew about Jupiter way before our scientists now know about it. They know and have intricate drawings about the orbit of Sirius B around Sirius A. What is baffling is the fact that they actually drew Sirius B with a smaller size, claimed that the star itself consists of a brighter matter, than iron, which they called Segla. How is it possible that with all this knowledge, today we consider these facts as pure myth, when their myth seems to be accurately represented? What we are finding out about our universe in the last couple years. Sirius was first seen 1862. American astronomer Alvin Clark managed to observe Sirius as composed of two stars with a target of, I guess, 47 centimeters in diameter. Tiny. But the Dogon managed to calculate that Potolo takes around 50 years to orbit Sirius. Modern day astronomers has calculated with a small degree of error that it actually takes 50.04 years, because they have to say that, yeah, well, we are way better at math. Fine. But it's actually more incredible. The Dogon state that Emiya, the second companion of Sirius, and even has a smaller satellite that orbits around it. The Dogon call it Nea Tolo, basically translated as the star of the woman. Now, of course, this is not an isolated event. Ancient peoples also have extensive knowledge about Sirius. Ancient Egypt, again, when it was Kemet, know that most things, when it was called Egypt, were lost. Completely lost. Even the Vatican doesn't have this stuff. Sirius was referred to as Sopdet, and it is recorded in the earliest astronomical recordings during the era of the Middle Kingdom that the ancient Kemetans based their calendar on the ecliptic of the rising of Sirius. Now, for the Chibachas, for modern-day Colombia, this, I guess it's called heliacal rising of Sirius, marked the beginning of the rain season. Ancient Sumerians also considered Sirius as very important and used it to define a timing of the agricultural cycle. Bright stars important to the ancient Polynesians for navigation between many of the islands of the Pacific Ocean. The Maori, people of New Zealand, the appearance of Sirius marked a chilly onset of winter. The Maori called it Takura, referring to both the season and the star. So, as we see, there are numerous cultures, ancient civilizations, who believe Sirius is of extreme importance. The Dogon, however, had the most accurate details of Sirius that have been saved. I'm not saying that other people on this planet didn't know it. I'm just saying that their records, ancient, were destroyed. Now, according to the Dogon, all of their knowledge comes from beings that came from Neantolo, which is the satellite of Emiya in the Sirius system, and that they got this information around 3000 BC. And in thinking of the mass burnings and destruction of the ancient knowledge, it's very, very relevant that these teachings were kept saved. Now, these beings were referred to as the Nomos. They arrived to the Dogon on something called a red arc. As these beings landed, there was smoke, there was fire, roaring sounds that resembled huge rocks crashing together. So that's a ship. I'm calling that a ship. I'm calling it. So, what do we think about these histories? Because I'm going to take you now. I have to say this is a little bit more whimsical, brought together from all of the things that we have found in the last couple of years, all of the teachings we have heard. So sit back and relax and take what you want from it. In a time long ago, the Neonoids from the Bellatrix system, the constellation of Orion, and the reptoid colonies from the constellation of Sagittarius arrived to inhabit the Earth. The reptoids and Neonoids allowed mammalian species to evolve to, well, sentiency. These mammals were called the pre-Cetaceans. These pre-Cetaceans provided food for all the colonies in exchange for technology, which in turn improved their population rate further. These three civilizations coexisted in harmony, trading amongst each other for over 8 million years. All three civilizations developed advanced forms of space, time, travel. This pre-Cetaceans developed their spiritual side, such as psychic abilities, extensively. A Neonoid reptoid alliance from Bellatrix, believing they were superior to these pre-Cetaceans, came to Earth to cease all cooperation between the pre-Cetaceans and wanted to put them under their control. Over time, the Earth Neonoids and the reptoids became more and more influenced by the Bellatrix Neonoid reptoid alliance. The pre-Cetaceans, through their high psychic abilities, began sensing the aggression against them and came to see the threat presented by these reptoids, those civilizations. Being given permission for the Earth's spiritual hierarchies, the pre-Cetaceans decided to implode their fusion reactors located in the Ural mountain range. And you can actually see to this day a radiation signature that is odd. The pre-Cetaceans divided then further into two groups. One group evacuated out of our solar system to the constellations of Pegasus and Cetus. The other group altered themselves physically so they could enter the oceans and find heaven. This group is now our present day Cetaceans. These are the dolphins. These are the whales. The entire transformation process occurred over a period of 4 million years. Dolphins and whales in the ocean. When the transformation was complete, the later sector was safe. The first sector imploded the fusion reactors, destroying 98% of the Neonoid reptoid civilizations, the dinosaurs, the reptoids. The survivors evacuated to a planet in our solar system, Maldek. Earth spiritual hierarchies. and the Cardassians had to find a suitable guardian for the land. They searched the galaxy for 2 to 3 million years before finding what they were looking for. They found on the 4th planet of the Vega system a primitive aquatic species that started to emerge from the oceans. The species had created myths, a language, a hunting and gathering culture. The spiritual hierarchies of the Vega system were then asked if they would permit this species to be vastly altered genetically to accelerate their evolution so that they may become a guardian species. The Vega spiritual hierarchies agreed. So the traces of the first humans came from the Vega star system. Their technology improved very quickly. And once they had developed this star travel technology, they started to migrate into nearby star systems for over a period of 2.5 million years. During this time, the Galactic Federation was formed. Sirius B was colonized, and the Earth selected for seeding. Later, Mars and Venus were colonized, and the Hyperborea colony was founded on Earth. Dionide and Reptoids, in the meantime, had built up their forces and were invading various colonies throughout the solar system. Hyperborean Earth, Mars, Venus were victim to these attacks, and the Dionide and the Reptoids gained control over the solar system for a period of approximately 80,000 years. In response to this Galactic Federation planned a counterattack to reintroduce humans to this system. They arranged for a battle planet 4 times the diameter of Earth to come into the solar system and destroy the planet Maldek, which was the Dionide Reptoid stronghold. The remains of the planet Maldek are what we now see as the asteroid belt. After the destruction of Maldek and the defeat of the Reptoids, Dioids, a human colony was once again established on Earth. It was later, at least what we now know as Lemuria. Over the next 850,000 years, the Lemurians spread across the face of the planet. They founded daughter colonies such as Atlantis, which is now central China and Tibet, and the Libyan Egyptian colonies. And even the Libyans and the Egyptians, combatants, say it was a colony. The Atlanteans began to acquire a feeling of uniqueness about their culture and wanted to eliminate Lemuria so they could become the mother country. The Atlanteans began forming alliances with the renegades, the Palladians, the Alpha Centaurians, which had another hierarchical system of government. They established the destruction of Lemuria by taking Earth's moon. Earth had 2 moons in those times, out of orbit by using force fields until it was as close as possible to the Lemurian Empire, and then the moon was destroyed, resulting in a catastrophic shower of meteors. This destroyed much of Lemuria, but this also resulted in many pressures being inflicted on the tectonic plates, resulting in the gas chambers under Lemuria to implode, and thus the sinking of the Lemurian continent. Empire would not bow down to the hierarchical rule of Atlantis and the Libyan Egyptian empires, and was thus forced to literally go underground. Today, they form what is known as the Kingdom of Agatha, or Shambhala. And thus autocracy was born. Atlantis formed the 10 ruling districts, each with their own king. Kings formed the Governing Council of Atlantis. The Royal Governing Council of Atlantis decided that a new form of government was desperately needed, in which a superior ruling class could be established by sustaining their pretense that they had been empowered by some god force. Autocracy born, and was in full control, enforcing a period of peace and stability. To achieve control over the populace, they started experimenting with people's DNA, genetics. This resulted in the people's consciousness being reduced, lifespans contracted, psychic, spiritual abilities dramatically decreasing. Throughout the years, there were many wars amongst the various empires due to underground movements of people that wanted to have a more Lemurian philosophy and put that back in place, so no hierarchy. These wars led to a vast destruction, and as a last resort, these warring empires decided to attack the opponents' crystal temples, which were responsible for maintaining 2 frozen layers of water, about 15,000 to 30,000 feet above ground, which protected the people on Earth from the harmful sun rays and the rays of the cosmos, and also ensured the stable weather patterns at all times. Now, unfortunately, the attacks were made simultaneously and caused the firmament, the water layers, to be broken down, and thus millions of gallons of water poured down on the surface, causing what is known biblically as the Great Flood. The breakdown of the firmament also resulted in the polar ice caps freezing, and also many climatic variations that we have today. So after the flood, about 2 million years, people survived the flood from an original 65 known million. So 2 million people survived. And even science says this. And there were 65 million before that. Unfortunately, many of the survivors were mutants, mutant humans that had been genetically altered by the Atlanteans into a much slower and lower state of consciousness. Also, the fact that the firmament was no longer in existence resulted in DNA, and thus consciousness breaking down even further. A few different renegades from Pleiades, Alpha and Beta Centauri came to different places on Earth after the flood, seeing it as an opportune time to establish their own desired ideas, also then seen as godlike and thus revered. Being already genetically altered, the surviving humans therefore easily controlled by these renegades. Since no form of disobedience to these new gods was allowed, the concept of ruling by divine right became the way of things on Earth. This concept of worshipping an elite has continued to this day, or we wouldn't have kings and queens and cross-dressing pedophile priests. Cultures would rise against culture in wars claiming that the elite they themselves worshipped were superior to the elite of the opposition or the opposing faction. Wars, of course, of religion still occurring to this day. We are now in times, though it will finally bring to an end an approximate 10,000 years of semi-consciousness and regain our full consciousness that we deserve. This is due to our entire solar system coming in contact to what is known as the photonic belt. This is changing us as we speak. Now, of course, this is whimsical. But as we can see, the stories of our earth are related to the stories in the heavens. It must be that way, because we are not separate beings. When we talk about the things that have been discovered, the beings that have been discovered, we do not make sense. That there must have been other beings here. You know, Tony was reminding me of the how many billions of years or millions of years, the footprint that they found in Texas. Do you remember that one, guys? Next to a 3-toed dinosaur. So we were all over. But when I say we, that doesn't mean us. And what we are now specifically is genetically modified beings. We are. And it's happening faster, unfortunately, because of a lot of things that we eat now. How we eat. They're making foods that incredibly hurt our genome. So we're changing faster and faster now because they're trying to make money out of this. So do you think it's too far off to say there has been genetic manipulation here? We're going into that with the science of what's happening to us right now and the stories of what happened back then. What we have been seeing on this planet, to me, just shows war. And it's a war that's not exactly happening here. The technology that they're suddenly telling us that they've found. The Vatican suddenly opening their libraries. The Pope with his strange really strange ideas coming out, saying, you know, we shouldn't build walls if we're Christian. And then you look at the wall that he has. There is a system here. Maybe we can even call it the universal tree. Because many have been asking, what can truly be expected from these changes that are happening now? I know some want to call it enlightenment, activation. I'm not sure. You know, with me, my health goes up and down. I felt great Sunday, and then Monday I felt like, kill me now. I did. There's so many things I want to do, with you, to bring enlightened teachers. Tony wants and has agreed to do his own show. I just have to be strong enough, and he will present you with more enlightened teachers. We tell you the same things, of course, but I want it. I want to hit this from every single way we possibly can. You know what I mean? Because there's a way we can reach this thing. Because I never believe that we're out of time. Mostly because I don't believe in time. So I know people live in the past. So if you live in the past, you were to time travel, pick a good time. Picking something that sucks is not working well. But know this. Anyone who does not think ascension is one of the highest priorities has accepted living an illusion. There are plenty of them. Each ring that you see in the chakra geometry is but a layer of reality. Can never be the whole thing by itself. Thus Earth has never been alone. And let me show you. These layers of experience continue to add themselves over large expanses of time. They serve to strengthen the universal tree. It is a fact that the rings around a tree contribute to its strength. And since every fractal contains an image of the whole, every moment through its metamorphosis you are able to utilize the knowledge of these higher principles on this plane, because they've been built from the ancients. Here's how simple and clear it is to understand, to get this. I need you to feel this. The trees play the most hidden role in all of humanity. Everything that exists here feeds off a tree in some way or another, whether it be fruits, oxygen, vegetables, materials. Even droids could not exist without a tree, because many parts used in computers are derivatives of trees. They have the power to give and to take away life with elements that can be extracted from them. Person can find the elixir of life or a deadly poison all in a tree. Usually it's the same tree. This knowledge is so expansive that the fractal shows most of the information is still on trees, which of course is also the paper for books. On the higher levels, the trees contain information. The information can be extracted and made accessible to man and woman, who we find most extrovert at this moment, not knowing the original state of existence. So who are these higher beings that have always been helping us? Because now we're on to something. Looking deeper, we may find many great symbols, all associated with a tree. The most famous is that, from the garden. However, you find a great deal of lore which subtly indicates that we are all children playing on a massive tree. Some are on the ground while others are in the air, but the reality is they are still children because they have yet to realize this. Now I have completed the levels that one actually should do to properly instruct, so I will get right to giving it to you right now. This is so you can do the exact same thing. And I've often said, My ideas are not to have everyone looking at me for knowledge constantly, but rather to instruct properly, so you can cultivate your own knowledge, your special existence, which is individual to you. I want you to take a look and know how many of these attainments you have already reached, and simply check them off in your mind, because there's something you will begin to notice when you are finished. 1. In regards to meditation and discipline, knowing the past, present, future, tolerance of the heat and the cold and the other dualities, knowing the minds of others, and so on, checking the influence of fire, sun, water, poison, so on, remaining unconquered by others. Primary attainments for your goal here: reducing one's body even to the size of an atom, expanding one's body to an infinitely large size, becoming infinitely heavy, becoming almost weightless, having unrestricted access to all places, manifesting from the lowest dimension to the highest plane, becoming worthy of true kingship, the power to reduce all imbalances. Secondary attainments: being unwavered by hunger, thirst, and other body disturbances, hearing things far away, seeing things far away, moving the body wherever thought goes, assuming any form, entering the body of others, dying when one desires, witnessing, participating in the activities of the creators, great accomplishment of one's determination, orders or commands being unimpeded. The facts are present to show a great deal of what must be told is activation, especially by the New Age movement personnel, has nothing to do with what true activation really is. Channeling angels for auspicious days, practicing the law of attraction to bring money, various things of that nature don't even scratch the surface when it comes to application that will actually assist you forever. Much of the information can only be used in this construct. What the infiltrators are teaching is only how to become more enlightened to pettiness and what others are doing, and not directly to self. This type of thing will only suffice for a time. And when that time expires, the person comes into a realization that they will have to go within. So it is there that you will find those things that those of us try to understand. We are ready. We are able to render service from the heart. If one is on the true path, then they would be able to cross out more than maybe 4 of the attainments I talked about. There's absolutely nothing to discourage you or about you if you find you cannot do some of these things. On the contrary, you should be happy. And you can now get into it from an actual real level. It is possible as long as you are happy and ready to make choices. Realize that there is so much more to existence available to you right now. Most are still speaking of 7 chakras. But we know for a fact there's more than 21. Way more than that. And I tell you the truth. If a positive side was created, a negative one was birthed simultaneously. Negativity is ground. Ground is stability. Know your rights and your lefts. That creates balance. Balance is the birth of any two components mixed together. Cannot be known until it comes about. What I tell you further is that the whole way one looks at things will have to be changed on a constant basis if you are really learning. If you do not notice others around you, it may prevent you from doing this. If you are not acting the same way you did yesterday, they will believe you are now strange. You are now a stranger. You will have to summon the greatest levels of consistency to do this, as one will actually be overcoming a being that resides in your stomach region usually, and is very haughty, wholly constructed, instructed on artificial things that makes it need to be trained. In essence, a poisonous serpent. So we finally get to the bottom of this. Know the joy of being able to rest on knowing the microcosm location of the world serpent, codename Levi, by the way. It has come forth completely without any doubt that the activation of the Kundalini is an act of bringing dormant serpentine energies from the base of the spine into the chakra centers, the wheels, the planets, the frequencies, the organs, for their lessons of generation, ascension, or descension. This exact thing is happening in our existence on this earth, in which we are, through time, transmuted from lower to higher worlds to arrive now, at this present point, Earth 3D, the blue planet, hence the term blue degrees. This transmutation takes place on an internal and external level, and it is done in a dialogue of desires, which the human must learn to resist, repeating as they sense from making bad choices to gain rewards that are being issued in stages according to real accomplishments. When the Kundalini awakens, it becomes a test to a man or a woman of what they will do once they gain power. As you rise, mistakes also have a greater impact, as it will be more dangerous to fall from the top of a ladder than it would be from the first couple steps. If you want to make that fancy, it is a secret and a sequence of riddles and puzzles that cannot be solved by common repetitive interaction, but only through sincere attention that comes with avoiding these cycles. Stop doing the same thing over and over again. It's hard. It's not easy. And the higher up you get, the closer you get to your goal, whatever your goal is, the harder it is. It doesn't get easier. And you can witness when you are stuck in cycles, when you remove that veil or the serpents that are poisonous to you. You must now move in peculiar ways. And not all snakes are poisonous. This also lends credit to the fact that not all serpents are evil, just like every man is not good. The universal tree has also replicated itself in contrast to retain balance. Know that unlearned, malignant beings use a strength that is linked to strong rocks and stones because of the dimensions they are on. They have grown used to carrying the weight of realms that are stacked on top of them. Yes, Mr. Saturn likes rocks and likes to get stoned. The actuality of the opposite polarity, dubbed good, is such a brute, has such brute strength, it's nothing to them. This is because they are not necessary, really. Superfluous. A stone can do little damage to the air. This is like a person swinging at thin air trying to hurt it. Such is the match going on between good and evil. They remain separate and can only connect through us. And notice this repetitive story taught by many of the ancestors, which clarifies why there was trees that warned about that which should not be touched or processed in certain ways. In ignoring this, many ate poison, which causes a spiraling through illusions that the person becomes unaware of once that which they ingested. Nothing really dies. Never forget that. It is safe to say that many experimentations have done such things, as it is known that a great deal of the Chaldean Persian magic was the act of ingesting poisons to divine various stages of madness. The netherworlds are madness indeed. You are responsible for putting all of this under control. If it continues to sleep, as one remains reluctant to accept the adventures, then one lacks the ability to vividly manifest spiritual anomalies on this realm, and can at times be subject to others who are using such abilities on their shared spatial, such as controllers. Let it be known now, this is generally no matter for those who do their work on other planes. A person who has not activated Kundalini on this plane may be activated on others, and often have various visions of such things. You're probably dreaming of these things now. However, for those that need power here, this has been their path. It is dangerous. It is serious. This is why it says the path must be straight. The spine must be straight. On the other side is fire. On the other side is deep water. Two opposite energies joining, producing fusion, which in turn becomes a great deal of energy through combustion. This is the plasma that Kesh has been teaching about. And I personally watched this in this very life fall by the wayside, attempting to wield power of Kundalini energy, and it is really clear why. It is like we talked about before, that there are two ways of activating the spiritual energy system to function vividly on this earth. From the bottom up, which root chakra to crown chakra, and beyond, or from the top down. There are pros and cons to both. Generally, a person who has activated the root chakra runs a risk of getting stuck there, as they slowly forfeit their ability to rise higher if they're not careful. This is generally due to the strong physical attraction that occurs. A person that has an active root chakra generally has a strong magnetic attraction, thus they pull in a lot of attention, which only serves to make them more material as their desires become satisfied, while submerging themselves into fields of pomp and circumstance and praise. They have a hard time controlling themselves, begin to act wildly, imagining they are invincible and have obtained some great stance. Generally, they have trouble rising this energy out of that area, because it would actually mean letting things associated with this chakra dissolve, to let go. They get stuck there. They hold there. They are very passionate beings. They are very attractive, but they are stuck, and they will stick you in more ways than one. So it's not long before they face the trial of permanently staying in the root chakra, which burns, consumes them. And soon only thing that's left for them is to descend to the nether regions of their consciousness, which is basically what you see when a basic Hollywood initiation is over, and thus they have succumbed to the poison, not tasted of it, learned from it, and made it something else. But they have lost a great deal, and it cannot be replaced, because karma now rears her head and becomes fully in effect as they lead others to their ruin, and thus are tasked to bear the weight, which, you become the fool indeed. Now, of course, activating from the top down has an exact opposite, but just as dangerous effect. This proves that the medium or the premium method and the university of the world is to converge the chakras, making them collapse upon themselves in perfection, like a well-tuned clock filled with geometric cogs of eras, aeons, and yogas of experience. Those that activate from the top down have a very hard time living in the heart, as to them, below the level of communication and communion. Remember, the heart is the earth, not very well disguised, but they are so lofty, speaking of benevolent alien creatures and angels in higher states of transitions with beings that use light codes and care nothing for petty material matters. Alas, the person, if they fail to make the complete journey through their lower chakras, they become akin to an alien as they alienate from society. They are disconnected, and soon they become frail, disconnected, as the Ming energy of the soul attacks the flesh through ideas of total fleshy submission. They are often unable to come out in public and share their grand revelations without feeling like they are being infected by the virus of what they begin to call livestock or sheeple. It is on that lonely ascent the energy runs out. Their final state is just as sad as one who failed to climb the ladder at all. The ladder, which is just your spine. On one end too heavy to go higher, on the other too light to go lower. So we have come with the cure. It starts in the middle, the heart. It starts here, on earth, my people. You should know that there is more active brain matter in your stomach than the brain has in its head. That's your stomach area. It has a mind of its own, a mind that must be tamed. And now you see that a great deal of the body is comprised of composite animal instructions and instincts that must receive sound lesson and instruction by you, the beast master. In addition, you must now be ready to learn the secrets of the heart, as the heart has been officially classified the largest endocrine gland. Join me Thursday, and we will talk about the poisonous snakes being absorbed through alchemy. Love you guys. Have a nice day.